Welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving into one of the absolute most fascinating contrasts in all of human history. Think about it. On one hand, we've got the Earth's most massive, undeniable, literally rock-solid monuments, the Great Pyramids of Egypt. And on the other hand, we have an entirely invisible, theological realm of spirits known as the Jinn. So you might be wondering, how on earth do the colossal physical stones of antiquity connect to the unseen, smokeless fire of these hidden entities? Well, it all essentially comes down to humanity's timeless, relentless obsession with hidden knowledge. Let's get right into it and explore the unseen.
Here's our roadmap for today. 1. The rise of the pyramids. 2. Math, magic, and megaliths. 3. Cosmic alignments. 4. The hidden realm of Jinn. And finally, 5. Magic and unseen forces. Starting off with Section 1, Rise of the Pyramids, a shift in the sands. Okay, we're starting our journey thousands of years ago. And actually, scratch your mental image of an endless sandy desert for a second. Between 11,000 and 5,000 BC, the Sahara was known as the African humid period. It was completely lush, green, and totally filled with lakes and nomadic hunters. But then, around 5,500 BC, a slight shift in the Earth's axis caused some really severe desertification. The landscape completely changed, and those tribes were forced to push toward the Nile River. Now, to protect their deceased rulers and, their immense wealth from the harsh elements and grave robbers, they started building these flat, mud brick tombs called mastabas. And from there, it was basically just centuries of intense trial and error. They progressed from Imhotep's famous step pyramid to the, disastrously structurally flawed bent pyramid before finally nailing the true smooth-sided pyramids around 2570 BC.
Moving on to Section 2, Math, Magic, and Megaliths, the ultimate triumph. 2,300,000. Let that staggering number just sink in for a second. That is the estimated number of individual stone blocks used to build the Great Pyramid under the pharaoh Khufu. It stands an incredible 481 feet tall. And we aren't just talking about easy-to-carry bricks here. Some of the granite blocks used for the king's chamber weigh up to 50 tons. 50 tons. And they didn't just pick these up next door. They were quarried in Aswan and transported 800 kilometers away, literally using the flooding of the Nile River to float them directly to the Giza Plateau.
Which obviously brings us to one of the biggest historical mysteries ever. How exactly was this whole thing built without iron tools, without modern machinery, or, wait for it, even the wheel? According to our sources, this was achieved through nothing but sheer human ingenuity and crazy levels of organization. Millions of laborers, who by the way were highly skilled farmers and artisans, not slaves, dragged these colossal stones on wooden sledges. To reduce the friction, they just continuously poured water on the sand right in front of the sledges. But what's truly wild isn't just the weight, it's the geometry. The entire pyramid is perfectly aligned to true north, and they did that without a compass. And that intense focus on geometry brings us to a pretty haunting piece of text from an ancient Egyptian math manuscript known as the Ahmus Papyrus. The title of this document translates to Directions for Knowing All Dark Things. Let's just pause on that. Back then, mathematics, engineering, and geometry, they weren't just seen as practical, everyday tools. They were viewed as dark, secret, magical knowledge that belonged exclusively to the priesthood. It really bridges the gap between physical engineering and the highly secretive, esoteric, occult practices that eventually evolved all around these structures.
Section 3, Cosmic Alignments and Esoteric Initiations.
So, this idea of dark knowledge ended up birthing centuries of speculation. Take the Orion correlation theory that popped up in the 1980s. Researchers started noticing that the layout of the three main Giza pyramids aligns remarkably well with the three stars of Orion's belt. Now, in ancient Egyptian religion, the constellation Orion was deeply associated with Osiris, the god of the afterlife. Because of this, some theorists argue the Giza Plateau wasn't just a graveyard, it was designed as a literal earthly map of the stars. But as you'll see, the theories go way further than just mapping out constellations.
Our sources highlight several esoteric and frankly wild conspiracy claims surrounding the Great Pyramid. For instance, some secret societies and occult texts claim the pyramid was actually built by the Melchizedek order to serve as a massive global energy capacitor, basically meant to provide free energy to all of humanity. Others argue it was designed by the mythological figure Hermes as a school for secretive initiation rites, complete with supposed devices used to measure a person's aura, and some even propose it was a giant antenna meant to control planetary weather and orbit. Now, obviously, these claims depart pretty wildly from modern archaeology, but we are reporting on them here because they perfectly demonstrate humanity's deep, burning desire to attribute supernatural hidden power to structures we just struggle to comprehend.
And this whole esoteric tradition extended super deep into their theology too. Ancient Egyptian texts describe something called the abyss, which was this terrifying spiritual region made of swirling, pulling forces. It consisted of the fire of solidification, which was ruled by the goddess Isis, and the fire of dispersion, ruled by Nephthys. Initiates basically believe that if you could pass safely through this intense metaphysical abyss, you would completely eliminate the need for any future reincarnation. They were quite literally trying to master the unseen forces of the universe.
Section 4. The realm of Jinn, invisible entities. So, leaving behind the physical stones of Egypt, we're now pivoting into a completely invisible mystery outlined extensively in Islamic texts. The very word jinn comes from an Arabic root that literally means to cover or conceal. Just like that hidden knowledge guarded by the Egyptian priests, these are entities entirely hidden from human eyes. According to the texts, they were actually created long before humans were, and they were forged from an essential smokeless fire.
To really grasp what the jinn are, our sources make a very clear contrast between them and other creations. So, humans are made from clay, and we possess free will, right? Angels, on the other hand, are created from light, and they're essentially programmed for absolute obedience. They literally cannot disobey. But the jinn? They sit in this really unique middle category. Created from smokeless fire, they possess free will exactly like humans do. This means they are completely Islamically accountable. They can choose to be good or evil, believers or complete disbelievers. And this unseen world? It has a deeply complex hierarchical society. Arabic scholars actually categorize them quite specifically. Jinn is just the general umbrella term. If they live in houses right alongside humans, they're called amir. Those that specifically interact with children are known as arwah. Now, if a jinn actively chooses to be wicked, it becomes a shaitan, or devil. A much more dangerous demon is called a marid, and the absolute strongest, most terrifyingly powerful demons of all are known as the ifrit. So it's a fully structured, incredibly diverse society operating completely parallel to our own.
The texts actually detail a really fascinating daily reality for the jinn. Even though they are totally invisible to us, they live these completely parallel lives. They eat, they drink, they even have their own animals for riding and milking. And here's a wild detail. The texts note that the animals of the jinn actually consume the dung left behind by human animals. Pretty specific, right? Furthermore, jinn are capable of shape-shifting. They sometimes take the physical forms of domestic or wild animals in our world. And again, because of that free will we talked about, they can follow different faiths or choose to follow no faith at all.
Finally, Section 5. Magic and Unseen Forces, a Collision of Realms.
So, what actually happens when our seen world and their unseen realm collide? Well, in Islamic theology, witchcraft is considered deeply, strictly forbidden precisely because it relies on subjugating these rebellious jinn. The sources outline a pretty grueling, dark process. Basically, a practitioner attempts to enlist a jinn to cause harm to someone or maybe to extract wealth. But in return, the jinn make incredibly exhausting demands. They might require the sacrifice of a very specific animal, like a rooster, under highly stringent conditions, or they might force the human target into total isolation, sometimes mandating 40 days straight in a room without a single drop of sunlight. It is an absolutely terrifying exchange of power.
And clashes between humans and jinn, both intentional and completely unintentional, have been thoroughly documented in theology for centuries. Our sources share this highly specific hadith, which is an anecdote from the Prophet Muhammad. He reported, and I quote, "A strong demon from the jinn came to me yesterday suddenly so as to spoil my prayer." He goes on to explain that he actually overpowered the demon and intended to tie it to a pillar in the mosque for absolutely everyone to see, before eventually changing his mind. This really highlights the foundational theological belief that these hidden forces are constantly, actively interacting with our physical world.
But, this belief in harnessing unseen entities, it definitely didn't end in ancient antiquity. Our sources connect these ancient concepts straight into modern occultism and current conspiracy theories. Texts written by prominent 20th century occultists claim that elite secret societies, like in 33rd degree Masonic rituals, are still actively invoking invisible spirits for power today. They describe the presence of things like giant white spirits and blue divas. So, whether you call them jinn, divas, or simply magic, the human desire to converse with the unseen remains exactly as potent today as it was when priests stood atop the pyramids.
Which brings us to a really profound question that I want to leave you with today. From the 2.3 million back-breaking stones of the Great Pyramid, all the way to the intangible, smokeless fire of the Jinn, what exactly drives humanity's eternal obsession with mastering forces we simply cannot see? Whether we are perfectly aligning megaliths to the stars or whispering incantations in the pitch dark, our desperate pursuit of the unseen world is perhaps the most enduring human trait of all. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.